the host of The Opinion, Whig Tory, Michael J. So we're going to discuss Trudeau and what led to his demise and his resignation as at yesterday, and what you can expect going forward. But prior to that, I want you to get some history on what led up to his resignation. And we're going to refer to a podcast by The Economist. The Economist is a magazine for many, many decades, read by the top 1%, top 10%, and financial elite, old establishment elite, across North America, Europe, and various other areas. So we're going to go to our main screen, start off with The Economist, and once we go through this, then I'll explain what I believe is going to happen with the Prime Minister vote, political landscape, and how it's going to go. It's going to be very short, so just pay attention to this part here.
The Economist. Hello and welcome to The Intelligence from The Economist. I'm your host, Jason Palmer. Every weekday, we provide a fresh perspective on the events shaping your world. It's been a decade since a horrific attack at a satirical French newspaper kicked off Paris's worst ever year of Islamist terrorism. Our correspondent speaks with the editor of Charlie Hebdo, which still stands for the freedom to poke fun at everyone. And our series, The World Ahead, continues, looking this time at how in 2025 the pharmaceutical industry will be leaning on artificial intelligence. AI can dream up better drug molecules perhaps, but there's no replacement, yet, for human trials. First up, though, by the time it came as no surprise.
So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister.
Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the longest-serving leader of any G7 country, is out.
Canadians deserve a real choice in the next election, and it has become obvious to me with the internal battles that I cannot be the one to carry the Liberal standard into the next election.
Even until a couple of years ago, it would have been hard to imagine such battles resulting in an inglorious ousting. It's true, though.
Justin Trudeau, like a lot of other Western leaders, didn't have much of a choice. He was told not to amble, not to tarry, but to sprint for the exit after he failed to connect with the voters who elected him 10 years ago.
Rob Russo is The Economist's Canada correspondent.
About 80% of Canadians had turned on Mr. Trudeau and said it was time for him to go. Like a lot of other leaders, he's lost those voters to populist conservatives over the last decade.
But it's not just voters he's lost, it seems he's lost his own party. Can we wind back and understand why that's happened?
Look, there's nothing that concentrates the mind like a hanging, and about 150 Liberal MPs now see that there is not a safe Liberal seat in the entire country of Canada. They've lost some what were considered very safe seats in by-elections over the past year. So Mr. Trudeau was contested within his own party and within his own cabinet, no more dramatically so than about a month ago when Chrystia Freeland, his finance minister and deputy prime minister, the woman who has stood by his side since he won election a decade ago, left in a cantankerous resignation and lobbed a grenade towards Mr. Trudeau on her way out the door, basically saying that he was superficial and facile in the face of a Trump threat to the Canadian economy.
It does seem like a rather sudden fall for somebody who was taken to be the savior of liberalism worldwide.
Yeah, when you look at the tumble Mr. Trudeau has taken over the last decade, it's dizzying. This was the beacon of progressivism for a lot of Western democracies, and he squandered it. He squandered it how? By, in some ways, turning his back on his own promises. It was interesting to hear Mr. Trudeau talk about the fact that one of his biggest regrets was that he failed to move ahead on one of his signature promises in 2015, and that was to reform Canada's electoral system to allow for proportional representation. He failed to get a consensus on that from the opposition parties, and he dropped it.
I do wish that we'd been able to change the way we elect our governments in this country so that parties would spend more time trying to be people's second or third choices, and people would have been looking for things they have in common instead of trying to polarize and divide Canadians against each other.
But where he really lost ground was with the voters on economic issues who had grown tired of identity politics and whose priorities had shifted from climate and minority rights to issues like the cost of housing, the soaring costs of inflation, like immigration, which had grown exponentially under Mr. Trudeau. So this consensus, this broad swath of voters that he had managed to assemble in 2015, younger voters, middle class and working class voters, Indigenous voters, really came undone.
To be fair, Rob, it wasn't all bad.
Mr. Trudeau did win plaudits in his first term, even grudging plaudits from his rivals, for his handling of a truculent Donald Trump during the first renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement in 2018. He won praise for taking about 450,000 younger Canadians, children, off the poverty rolls in Canada by coming up with what's called the Canada Child Benefit, increased payments for parents right up to the age of 18. He was seen as enlightened by bringing in one of the very first carbon taxes in industrialized countries that was seen as a serious indication of his commitment to fighting climate change.
So after all that, the Trudeau era is over. Who's likely to replace him?
It will depend on what kind of race the Liberal Party decides it's going to have. There is some suggestion that facing the imminent threat of Donald Trump's tariffs, that they shouldn't waste time, that they should go directly to selecting a leader from within the current caucus. That would mean somebody like Chrystia Freeland, the former finance minister, would be among those talked up as a potential successor, as would Dominic LeBlanc, who is known as the minister with asbestos underwear. It seems he can sit in any hot seat and handle that heat. If it's a larger race that allows for people from the outside to come into the race, the most prominent name mentioned over and over again is, of course, Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, former governor of the Bank of Canada. He was governor of the Bank of Canada under a Conservative government. So he and Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, are not strangers. He is an outsider. He would be the one who would be able to say, I wasn't there during the last several years. I'm a fresh start. Vote for me, and I'm serious about the economy, and I will take on Trump.
But I suppose the question, having heard your description of Mr. Trudeau's downfall, is whether or not Trudeau was the problem. Do the Liberals have a chance, whoever ends up in charge?
It's going to be daunting for anybody who tries to succeed Mr. Trudeau. They are at historic lows in terms of popularity with Canadians. That's going to be very, very difficult for any new leader to overcome.
So if it's likely then that the Conservative leader will be the next PM, then give us a brief introduction.
Sure. Pierre Poilievre is a career politician. He's 45 years old. What he has succeeded in doing is cementing a new bond between Conservatives and the working class voters of Canada, unionized Canadians, and most surprisingly, younger Canadians. That's a switch for Conservative leaders in Canada. Mr. Poilievre has also been explicit in that he is going to end what he calls wokeism and the fixation with identity politics that he's accused Mr. Trudeau of over the last decade. Mr. Poilievre spent over an hour with populist rabble-rouser Jordan Peterson, in which he espoused his philosophy of government, and it was illuminating.
What did we do wrong as a country?
We have a prime minister who is dedicated to an extremely radical ideology. Basically, authoritarian socialism has guided him throughout his entire prime ministership. He believes in a state that controls every aspect of your life, your money, your speech, your thought, all of the industries of the country. And every time that has been tried, it is a complete disaster.
So the question then is, when all this gets resolved, what happens next?
We've just heard the starting gun of a 10-week sprint that will lead to the selection of a new leader. And that new leader then will have to, in the interim, come up with a new platform for the Liberal Party that will almost certainly face defeat in the House of Commons when Parliament reconvenes on the 24th of March. That means that we will likely be into an election campaign in Canada near the end of March, and that election campaign will almost certainly turn on the threat posed by President-elect Trump's tariffs, which would be a staggering blow to the Canadian economy. If Mr. Trump goes ahead and puts a 25% tariff on Canadian imports into the United States, economists have suggested that it would lead to at least a 2% drop in Canada's GDP. That means a cost of about $2,000 for every Canadian. That's what the campaign will be about. Who is best positioned to confront the threat posed by Donald Trump?
Rob, thanks very much for your time.
My pleasure, Jason.
Okay, so there you go, folks. That's The Economist, their view. I think it pretty much encapsulates everything you need to know to have an understanding with what's going on here. And furthermore, let's get to the point of why we have this video here today. What Canadians can expect to happen from this point forward. Number one, as at the resignation of Justin Trudeau yesterday, prior to his press brief letting the public know about his resignation, he went to the Governor General and prorogued Parliament till March 24. Now, that really does not give them much time to get a new leader in place and up to speed. So, in all likelihood, they're going to work as fast as they can to work on a new leader. And they'll come back March 24, get the bill to keep government, the spending bill the government needs to keep open, and then prorogue it again. That would be, in all likelihood, what's going to end up unfolding. Now, on the interim, people are going to say, well, Trump is going to come into power January 20th. We got to worry about tariffs. And you just got to understand that Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He's Adolf II. The ammo's there in every which way. So the Liberals can still deal and work with negotiations once Trump comes into power, because in all likelihood, he's just going to do tariffs because he just doesn't know any better. You have to understand, in his first term, he wiped out the soybean market and over a decade of work of the farmers in Middle America. Wiped out their deals they had with China and, pork and a few other things, but especially soybeans. Create a $28 billion deficit to the American economy to bail out the farmers while he had this spat with China that ended up going nowhere. Business got lost. The business, soybean business, permanently lost. Over a decade of working on it, the farmers got wiped out. Plus, Trump added $28 billion to the debt. And this is how Trump operates. He hasn't learned from that. That was the first term. He's not learned from that, so he's probably going to do this again and just cause pain and suffering. And it's rather unfortunate, but this is the Republican and the progressive conservative way of governing, just pain and suffering. And it's a real issue. And the general public just get caught up on the ideology. I'm this camp, I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, and then just argue their positions. And you really have to wonder how this arguing back and forth has really helped the evolvement of government within the role of the people it's meant to serve. And you have to ask the question, why do we have to argue? Why are we not able to ascend these judgments and come to some form of resolution that's workable and helps everybody? But for some reason, everybody in their a lot of people in their personal lives and the country's consciousness just love to play villain, victim, and then hero. And you keep rinsing and repeating. Victim, villain, victim, hero. Villain, victim, hero. Rinse and repeat. And this basically has been the natural trend of all human beings and all countries, all democracies, up to this point in time. It'd be a good time to rise above that, because you've got other issues that no country is able to solve yet because they're just arguing back and forth. Do you really think tax cuts, do you really think tariffs are going to bring housing costs down? Do you really think immigration has caused your problems? The reason why you've got a country and where you are now is based on immigration. So you're just not asking the right questions. So I'll leave that with you. Everybody take care. Maybe wokeism isn't all that bad after all. Love and peace to everyone. Comment in the comments section. Talk to y'all soon. Ciao for now.